Heidi-ho! Welcome to episode number 7 of the travel show. This particular episode is an educational episode. Beware, beware. If you aren't into educational stuff, this is not for you. No, it's about the water management system here, there. I don't know. And it is just talking about what made them actually get to the point where they knew, okay, we got to do something about this because the water we're below sea level, we're gonna drown, that kind of stuff. So this is what basically this whole thing is about. We go to a park that's purely for showing how their water management system came into being, and get to go on a little boat tour that shows you where they build and one of the big sluice gates, which are these gigantic, huge, just you can't even imagine how big these things are until you get up close to see, which will happen in the next episode, because this one and the next one are both at this same park. I didn't want to put them together because then it would get on and on and on and drone on and on, like I'm doing right now. Anyway, I found it really interesting, educational, and I enjoyed it. So I hope you do too. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So episode 7. Here we go. We are going through the industrial part now, where the life expectancy is 10 years less than other people because of all of the chemicals and the bad pollution and also just working the jobs, isn't it, Andre?
I don't know if it's the job. I think it's especially mostly the air.
The air, okay.
Dikes. It's just a small one.
It's a small world after. It's a small dike after
Take
all.
Holland.
So what is the name of the place we're going to today?
Well, it's called, it's a project, it's called DELTAWERKS. And DELTAWERKS is located on an island. The island is named Vrouwenpolder.
Mm-hmm.
And that used to be a work island when they built the DELTAWERKS.
Okay.
That's what I know.
So these open and close?
Yeah.
Yes.
These are very big waterways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, look at the current. Yeah, so water's going right now.
Yeah, it's very water. Very much water. These are very big. Slots.
I believe it's
We are here.
Na 100 meter, bestemming bereikt aan de linkerkant.
Linkerkant.
Bestemming bereikt aan de linkerkant.
Linkerkant.
It looks like Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
Little mermaid. Get kissed by a seal.
Looks like Ariel 10 years later.
Yeah, right. A very,
20 years later.
yes, a very advanced Ariel there. She's quite mature now. I guess for continuity, she can't stay the same age forever.
Yeah. the marriage with the prince didn't work out. And
She's now bitter
yeah,
and jilted, and she's now back home with mum and dad. The widening of the canal through South Beveland is a major alteration project which has been necessitated by the construction of the storm surge barrier. Locks are being built north of Hansveit, which can be used by push tows. In order to control the water quality in this lake and the eastern something else, the discharge sluice in the form of a siphon has been built in the dam, which makes it possible to flush the lake with salt water. It goes from here down into the next area. The 10.5 kilometer dam lies in the inland end of the eastern area between South Beveland and Holland. It separates the Scheldt-Rhine link from the eastern Scheldt. That the link is a non-tidal canal for use by shipping. Parallel to the dam is a dike, the eastern limit of the Scheldt-Rhine link. The Phillips Dam is 6 kilometer long and meets up with the Grevlingen Dam. Inland shipping can use the Kramer locks, which are suitable for 4-barge push tows. It's information. A lot of information, my goodness. Oh, look at this. This is how their water control system works. Salt water is heavier than fresh water. The difference in specific weight is exploited in the Kramer locks. If a ship wishes to pass from this area to the next, it has to be done carefully. After all, we do not want the salt water from this area to get into the fresh water. Salt water in the lock chamber, therefore, has to be replaced with fresh water. This is done as follows. Water from the peripheral lake runs into the lock through openings in the wall. Salt water is drained off through the holes in the floor. Ultimately, the lock chamber is filled with only fresh water. The ship can now proceed out of the lock and into the next area. If a ship is headed in the other direction, salt water is allowed to enter the lock. The heavier salt pushes the fresh water upwards and then runs back into the peripheral lake through openings in the lock walls. How long did it take to figure this stuff out? This is crazy. Years and years and years. The Kramer locks in Phillips Dam lie between the eastern Scheldt, which is salt, and the Kramer, which is fresh. A separation system has been developed to prevent large quantities of salt water from intruding into the freshwater zone each time the lock is used. The system, where'd I go? A separation system has been developed to prevent large quantities of salt water from intruding into the freshwater zone each time the lock is used. The system exploits the fact that salt water is denser than fresh water. While ships are in the locks, the gates close at both ends. Fresh water in the locks is replaced with salt water, or vice versa.
You see how high it is compared to the people.
Wow, that's pretty darn high.
Yeah, and these aren't the biggest parts.
Wow.
The biggest parts are in the water.
Here's the system.
Yeah, on our waterways. And yesterday we've been to the Afsluitdijk on the north part. We've been
Oh, so we're down here now.
yeah, a lot of traffic of big things go on the Maas and the Rhine.
Okay.
And that's this is the biggest harbor in Europe, and then everything goes to the rest of Europe by truck and waterway.
So this is what the ring cycle was written about, the Rhine. The Nibelungen Lied.
If that would stop, then or again.
Wow.
So of course a lot of damage. But and then there's some very interesting. Queen donates her own clothes.
Oh, wow. So there were 180 deaths in the building of the project?
No, 180 deaths
In the-
in the storm.
Oh, in the storm.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, just and because of the storm, this is built.
Oh, okay.
So 180 deaths and immeasurable damage. But now we will be able to measure it.
Yes. We can measure it now because we have technology. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, look how high the water was against the buildings.
Yeah.
Wow. It's still going. Well, because of its vast scale and the unique conditions under which it was carried out, the Delta project required faster methods and better materials for the protection of the seabed. Traditional handmade brushwood mattresses were replaced by mattresses manufactured from materials such as nylon and asphalt. Mechanical stone repositioning machine was used to weigh down the mattresses, and asphalt was poured over the stone to keep them in place. A floating asphalt plant was designed for this purpose. Wow.
Floating tarmac.
Jeez. So innovative.
Yeah, that's the good thing about the necessity. If it's necessary, people get much more innovative.
We find a way. Like,
It's
you
like,
know, if aliens come, you know, we
yeah,
gotta do
we
something.
will. Yeah,
we gotta do
will.
something.
Yeah.
At that point, we gotta do something.
The biggest scientific breakthroughs are done in war. Wartime.
Yeah. We found the bomb. We've created the bomb. Oh, you can. Here's the control panel for one of the sluices, I guess. The components had to be placed in a position with great precision. The pontoons, which were used were secured by a whole web of anchor cables. Movements within that web were controlled from the wheelhouse. Position data were processed on land and signaled back. Look how tiny the people are right there. Shows how big this structure is. Look at the tiny people.
The Hover Dam is higher than this.
Really? Look at tiny people. Big dam. The barrier has reduced the cross-section of the mouth of the estuary. Consequently, currents have become stronger and erosion would occur if no countermeasures had been taken. Concrete block mattresses have therefore been laid to protect the estuary bed. These were manufactured in a factory, and among the purposes served by the stone asphalt mattresses is the protection of the banks. 4.5 million square meters of protective mattresses were laid in all. That's insane.
What they do with New Orleans,
So
we don't have
this-
the budget.
right.
Let's just take the chance.
Yeah, so this is one of those to scale. Wow, that's big. The earliest dikes were made out of materials which were available on the spot, earth reinforced with seaweed. At later date, stones were laid in front of dikes. The wooden pilings used in dike building suffered from epidemics of pileworm, particularly during the 16th and 17th centuries. Increasing use was made of stone in dike building. Until the early 20th century, stone facings were laid by hand. The scale of Delta project called for the use of machinery and new cladding materials. So I guess that's what happens when the worms got their hands on it.
Yeah.
Bad worms, bad worms. Then it turned into this.
That's not up to such strong winds. Let's see.
In 1953, the dikes were too low, too steep, too weak. Around the islands of Zealand, many dike areas were 20 to 90 centimeters too low. A dike section actually needed to be raised by no less than 180 centimeters. All the experts issued warnings, but no action was taken. This was a consequence of the Second World War and the Cold War in the 1950s. The government spent a great deal on defense in those days and not much on the dikes. And look what happened. Too steep and poor construction in the southwest in particular. The landward face of many dikes sloped very steeply. The sea dikes were made of sand or sandy clay, covered with a layer of clay. Grass mat bound them together. Poor maintenance had resulted in deterioration of both the grass mats and clay layers. Rain and waves found no obstacles in their way. Highest waves wash over the top of the dike. Initially, an occasional high wave washes over the top. This means that a thin layer of water regularly runs down the inside. The outside of the dike is continuously underwater. Phase 1. Phase 2. More and more water, more and more waves come over the dike. The waves do not break until they are on the dike. More and more water and bigger waves wash over the dike. The water now steadily runs down the inside of the dike, flattening the grass. It scours and churns the bare spots on the dike slope between the tufts of grass. After a while, the top of the dike is soaked through and has changed into a springy sponge. Phase 3, the dike cracks. Cracks appear over the length of the dike. The outermost layers on the inside wall slowly slide off the core of the dike, which is still dry. This is a critical phase. In a bid to prevent further sliding, the dike watchers cover the longitudinal fissures with tarpaulins or plug them with sandbags. If this is not done promptly, the water will run through the fissures, reach the deeper parts of the dike. The slope will slide even more. Phase 4. Slides. Large amounts of soil on the inside of the dike start to move, sinking a few meters. This is often a very slow process. Sometimes slides occur as fissures appear, with everything happening in just a few seconds. Dikes then collapse suddenly with a huge roar. Phase 5. Breach. The water flowing over the dike washes away more and more sand and clay. This makes the holes wider and deeper and the dike may be breached. If allowed to get out of hand, the breach like this becomes a channel through which water can flow freely in and out. Force of the storm. The catastrophe was caused by a northwesterly storm, which lasted for an exceptionally long time. It was at its most severe on Sunday at 1, February at 1 in the morning. Out in the North Sea, the wind reached average speeds of 110 kilometers per hour, while the storm was losing force in the north. The water level in the narrow southern part of the North Sea was building up. The week before the catastrophe. During the week before the catastrophe, a number of depressions above the Atlantic Ocean moved rapidly, speeding eastward. To the south of Greenland, another area of high pressure was also moving east, growing steadily stronger. 12 hours later, on the 31st, a depression lay to the north of Scotland. Wind speeds of around 110 kilometers per hour, subsequently rising to 125 kilometers per hour. Tore across the country in northeast Scotland. Gusts of winds at hurricane speeds of up to 180 kilometers per hour tore down a third of the trees. On this Saturday evening, the storm reached our shores.
The place where our trip starts used to be the spot where massive concrete paths were made for the storm surge barrier. A total of 66 enormous piers and 62 huge concrete bars. Due to a cost-saving operation, one of the paths, a pier, was not erected. It now serves as a climbing wall.
We are now leaving the former building docks. This is where the 66 pillars and the sill beams were built. The dock had to be excavated to a depth of 15 meters for this purpose. When the pillars were completed, the docks were flooded with seawater and the dike removed by dredging. This enabled the lifting vessels Australia and Taklift 4 to enter the dock and move the pillars and sill beams one by one. The docks are now used for the cultivation of suspended mussel banks. You can see part of one on the right-hand side of the ship, marked by the red and blue floats. We have now entered the middle channel called the Schaar van Rogenpad. Here, 17 pillars were placed. The Hammond channel with its 16 pillars is to our left, and behind us lies the Rogenpad, the largest and deepest channel with 32 pillars. A lock was built in the Rogenpad to provide boats with access to the sea and back. The cable to the left of the ship is the safety line. It marks the area where sailing is prohibited for safety reasons. From the ship you have a good view of part of the storm surge barrier. You cannot see the sill beam between the pillars as it is currently submerged. Just above the water, you can see the gray concrete upper beam. Together with the pillars, this forms the rabbet against which the steel gate is placed on the outside of the storm surge barrier. The gray tubes on top of the pillars hold the hydraulic cylinders with which the steel gates are closed when the tide becomes dangerously high. This prevents the intrusion of water from the North Sea and safeguards the hinterland against flooding.
High. In the past, high tides caused serious problems. In just a few centuries, around 10 polders and their villages vanished under the water for good. When the weather is clear, you can still see the tower of Koudekerke on the dike. This is all that's left of one of these drowned villages.
Dans cette région, les premières digues ont été...
Sandbanks. The largest sandbank is the Rogenpad, which runs from the North Sea to Zierikzee.
On a clear day, you can see the city with large towers straight ahead of us. We are now approaching the Rockenplaat sandbank. During low tide, this is a popular spot for seals and various bird species. The seals rest here during low tide. We respect the seal fiesta by not using the public address system until we return to this position. And the consistently high saline level of the water are the factors that contribute to the high quality of nature and the successful fishing industry in the area. The Oosterschelde is a vital source of food for hundreds of thousands of migrating birds. It is also one of the world's most famous areas for the cultivation of oysters and mussels. The underwater curves of the dike form an artificial rocky coastline. Rich and precious flora and fauna thrive on this hard surface. Divers are always fascinated by the variety of shapes, colors of sea anemones, seaweed, and sponges they encounter here. The construction of the storm surge barriers has kept this marine life largely intact.
Most of these birds use this area as an essential stepping stone during their world tour. With a little luck, visitors may see seals or dolphins. Both of these animal species are on the increase in Eastern Scheldt. Tides on Earth. Each high or low tide causes the movement of almost 1 billion cubic meters of water in the Eastern Scheldt. As a result of tidal movement, the water is continuously changing, bringing with it nutrients for plants and animals.
La force d'attraction de la Lune et du Soleil génère les marées. Chaque flux ou reflux déplace près d'1 milliard de mètres cubes d'eau dans l'escroc oriental, grâce aux plantes et aux animaux.
De eeuwenlange getijdenbeweging heeft in de Oosterschelde gezorgd voor een stelsel van and shut unnecessary. This is the simplicity behind the operation of the storm surge barrier. 62 gigantic slides are mounted at the ready between huge concrete piers. On average, the slides close only once a year when there is a flood warning. The rest of the year, they remain open to the tides so that the mussel and oyster cultures and the ecological system as a whole are under a minimum of pressure.